replay is sent out. Okay, so it's being live streamed. Great. It's good. So we are recording. Yeah, how are you doing? Sorry that I wasn't here for 3 weeks. Some of you have messaged me to say that you did miss the sessions over the period that I was on holiday. So I was away for just over 14 days in Mauritius, which was absolutely beautiful. I don't know if any of you have been. Right, I'm going to start, I think. We're 3 minutes over. And let me start telling you about today. So today we are talking about fair and reasonable settlements. And it's a really important topic because when you understand how to organize your finances, how to look at your settlement, so that you know whether the proposals you're putting forward for your finances are fair and reasonable, because that's what the court expects you to do. So today's talk is something that's, for me, really interesting. I hope really interesting for you as well. Lots of people ask me this question, and that's why I like to talk about what is a fair and reasonable settlement and how do you get there. So I'll start sharing my screen in a minute. Thank you, Barbara, for letting me know. Mediation didn't work. He refused to engage. I'm waiting for a form for them to start the next step. Yeah. This is the first time I've joined a call. Welcome. Divorce process started, waiting for 20-week period to complete in September. MIAM certificate received. So I'm presuming that you've not reached an agreement and that you are considering going to court now, and mediation possibly didn't work either. Do let me know if that's the case. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, correct. I've tried and he is not engaging. Okay. It's a shame when you are in that position, but it's really important that you keep moving forward, because sometimes what happens is that you get to these situations where the other person doesn't engage, and it's so confusing. You just end up stopping there for a while and waiting and hoping and talking. But sometimes it's best just to keep moving, take the next step, because even if you start court proceedings, if you don't need them, that's fine. But at least you've got them there in case you need it. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat box while I'm talking. But the best thing to do is to put your questions in the chat box as I'm going through, so that if I don't answer them while I'm talking through everything, then at least I can come to them in the end. Feel free to engage with me in the chat box. It's always good to get to find out your thoughts about what I'm talking about, and to get that interaction from you. Usually the sessions are about 45 minutes. Sometimes I go a bit over because I'm passionate about, certain topics. And also I'm getting lots of questions. So sometimes we do go over that a little bit. The first thing I'll do is introduce myself, because some of you are new here. It may be your first talk. It may be the first time you've come across me as well. My name is Bhavna Radia. I am a former divorce lawyer. I qualified many, many moons ago when I was like 23, and I worked as a divorce lawyer for many years. I got married when I was 27, and I went on to have 3 children with my now ex-husband. The children are much older, 22, 19, and 14. Even though I helped people to get divorced, I really believed in that fairy tale ending. You get married, it's forever, everything's going to be wonderful, you'll have children together, and you live happily ever after. And obviously that wasn't what was happening for my clients. I just didn't see that it would happen the same for me. In 2011, I found out that I would be going through a divorce. I made the decision to start divorce proceedings But in a way, I was left with no choice as far as I could see, because nothing was changing and I needed it to change. So I started divorce proceedings. We separated in 2011. My youngest was 1 year old at the time, and so it was quite a tricky, difficult time. It wasn't what I wanted. I fought against it, but I think sometimes you just know that there is no other option. Nothing else is going to change unless I move this forward. And so I took that difficult decision, even though I hoped I didn't have to. And it was really difficult. I'd taken time off work to bring up the children. Financially, I was really worried about what was going to happen. The mortgage was so huge, I couldn't afford it. And alongside looking after the children and paying for everything else, it was really difficult. My mental health was definitely impacted by the divorce, and actually what I had been through during the marriage as well. I didn't feel very confident. My self-esteem was really affected, and I didn't really have any belief in myself that I could get through this, even though I'd been helping, people go through divorce for so long. So I got to a point where obviously I'm going through the journey of divorce because that's what I had decided. I knew that I needed to do this. And I kept moving. I kept moving through. It took me quite a few years to actually come to the end of the process. And through this time, we had some really difficult days. We sold the family home. And that was a really tough time because I didn't have anywhere to live and I'd sold the family home. So we went through lots of struggles. But what I would say is, regardless of what your journey is, you will get through it. There is a light at the end of that tunnel. At the moment that, as soon as we settled matters, the divorce was done, I felt that relief. I felt sadness, obviously, for that time, that the marriage that we'd shared, the children that we'd had, sad that it had come to that. But there was so much relief, so much peace that I felt afterwards. And we've gone to stabilize. The children have grown up. I now run 2 businesses. And have bought another home, and generally look back at that time as something so far in the past. It's been 13 years. But since I went through my own journey, I decided that I wanted to help people in a very different way. And so I offer these talks every week to empower you, to give you knowledge. And ultimately, the aim is that you learn to manage this process yourself, you keep your costs down, but you do it in a way where you are moving through and you are looking to that point that you are trying to get to, which is the end of the marriage and getting to that peace that I felt as soon as it was done. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about me now, and I'll come to a little bit about how I work at the end. I really want to jump into the topic, which is all about fair settlement today. So what is a fair settlement? This is an agreement that is fair and reasonable. Account of your whole situation. We have to look at the needs of both of you, and we have to look at the needs of the children as well. Because, when we look at what there is in the pot, we have to also decide what do you all need before we can think about what is a fair settlement. The law gives us various factors to take into account, lots of things that we need to consider. And that's why it's not possible for me to just get a formula and work out what you should get. This is really based on your circumstances. It's really based on you, your ex-husband or wife. It's based on the children, what their needs are, the circumstances, and what there is. And so we have to look at things quite carefully. And I guess that's why finances are so complicated. These factors that we have to take into account, you should look at and you should think about how they fit you. They're called the Section 25 factors because it's Section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act that sets them out. And you should look at each element and work out how it applies to you. This will give me an idea, it will give you an idea of what could be a fair outcome. And I'm going to go through them with you so that you understand. But before I do that, I want you to know that a lot of people will come to me and they will say, well, it's 50-50, isn't it? We just share everything 50-50. Surely that's how it works. And it may be that they've been told that, maybe a friend's told them, a neighbour's told them, maybe they've read something on Google and they think 50-50 is where you should be. And that isn't necessarily the case. It might be, but it isn't necessarily where you will end up. The court looks at 50-50 as a starting point. And then we have to look at these factors and work out whether maybe you should get more or whether the other person should get more to make it a fair settlement. Sometimes 50-50 is not fair. And often there's different things available to make it a fair agreement. So we really need to look at the detail of this. And when we are looking at what we're sharing, it doesn't matter whose name it's in. Lots of people, and I had a call this morning and they said, but we haven't got anything joint, so surely we just keep what we've got. And that isn't how it works. Everything in your sole name, everything in the other person's sole name, and everything in joint names needs to be disclosed. It needs to be put on the table. And that might be your marital pot. It's everything in this country and everything abroad as well, so bear that in mind. Some things might be left out of the pot. And that's a grey area, so we would need to look at that in a bit more detail. But we have to look at everything there is: pensions, investments, savings, assets that are worth more than £500, obviously properties, shares, everything. And that is what is being shared. Ideally, the court wants what they call a clean break. They want you to be financially independent of each other. And that is the ideal situation. Sometimes it's not possible. So for example, where you might have young children, it may not be possible to have a clean break. It might not be possible if there's not enough assets for you to have a clean break as well. And we'll have a look at that and see in which situations a clean break is possible. And sometimes it's not possible or fair to have a clean break. So next I'm going to look at the various factors that I mentioned. Let's have a look at that when the slide moves. Okay. So these are the different factors that we need to look at. And when we start looking at these, you can get to an agreement yourselves. You don't need the court to get involved. So although I talk about the court will consider these, this is also something for you to consider when you're trying to reach an agreement yourself. And I'm going to go through them briefly. I won't be able to cover all of them like in a lot of detail today, but let's have a quick look at them so you understand them. So the first thing is the welfare of the child. And actually, the children of the family are absolute priority. And this is children that are aged 18 and under. And I know that obviously if you've got children aged 21, they don't just not need you anymore. They still need you, but they're not taken into account when we're looking at your finances. The children are the main consideration, the priority in your financial negotiations. Sometimes if you are the main carer, it may be that you need more of the assets because you need to house the children if you are spending more time with them. You may have more expenses from a point of view of utilities, shopping, clothes, just generally, you might need more finances to be able to house them and support them. You may also work part-time because you are running around with school runs, etc. And so therefore you need a greater share of the assets. But their needs have to come first. The next thing here is income and earning capacity. This is really important where there is a large difference in earnings between you and your ex-partner. Where one person could increase their income now or say in 2 years' time, that needs to come into account. So I do find during divorce, lots of people give up their jobs and they'll say, well, I'm not working, so I need more. But actually, when we look at it, their earning capacity is quite good. They're just refusing to get a job. And that's not fair. So we would look at your earning capacity if you have given up your job. We obviously can work out what you should be earning. Also taken into account here is property. Any property that you may have purchased before you got married, it may still need to come into the pot because it's needed to fund, this sharing of assets, to fund making sure the children have got a home, both of you a house, for example. And then financial resources, other financial resources. This could be assets that are not matrimonial assets, but they need to be considered because we know that you have these other assets there, for example. So you might have a trust fund, and this trust fund is giving you income. So we need to take that income into account when we're looking at the finances, even though the trust fund is not part of the assets. Again, there may be inheritance that's not part of your matrimonial pot, but we know that you've got that inheritance. So therefore, that inheritance could be looked at as that could be used for a family home for yourself, even though it's not part of the pot. So that's what we mean by financial resources. Financial needs, obligations, and responsibilities. What this means is needs, what your needs are. Each of you need somewhere to live. Each of you need income to live on. And you might need capital as well. So somewhere to live is obviously your housing. We need to think about what your housing needs are. Where do you need to live? What size house do you need? It's not what you want, it's what you need. We need to think about what income do you need to be able to pay your bills and your financial responsibilities. What capital do you need? You might need capital. For example, your family home might desperately need a new kitchen, and so you may need capital for that. You might have, say, a child that is disabled, and you may have capital needs to change things in the house, for example. So we have to look at that. Obligations and responsibilities could mean any debts that you've got, say school fees that you need to pay. Debts are covered, are looked at when we are splitting assets and liabilities. We need to think about who's keeping the debts and who's going to be paying them. So those are the kind of things that we would look at under financial needs, obligations, and responsibilities. The next thing is standard of living. And this one is quite difficult for people to understand because, of course, you want to keep the same standard of living that you've been enjoying while there was possibly two of you earning and one household. Now you'll be possibly earning and looking after your household, and your ex-husband or wife will need to fund their own household. So obviously things are going to be different. We need to consider that, can we keep your standard of living the same? Generally, it's not possible, but it might be possible. If, say, for example, there is extra money in the pot. But in those situations where it's not possible to keep your standard of living the same, it's ideal for you to both have the same standard of living. So you don't find the other person has got this really good standard of living and you haven't. We want to try and equalize your standard of living. It's more of a yardstick these days, though. It's not relied upon so much. But for example, if you were living in a house that was £3 million and the other person lived in a bedsit, then there may be a problem there because maybe your housing needs are not met. Maybe your standard of living is not equal. So we need to consider these alongside other factors as well. Why is age important? So it's important because if you, depending on your age, you may not be able to get a mortgage. Depending on your age, you may be drawing down on your pension already. It can have an effect on your mortgage capacity. If there is an age gap, we need to consider that as well, because one person may be close to being not working and the other person still has many years to work. So we need to consider that. And the length of marriage is important in how you split your assets. So if you've been married for 12 months, it may be that you look at what you have amalgamated during your marriage, during that 12 months. So you may have bought a house together in that 12 months, and it might be that you just sell the house and split the proceeds. and that everything you went into the marriage with stays with you, because it's a relatively short marriage. If you've had a 30-year marriage, you may have brought your children up, they've grown up and left home, and it might be that what's fair for you is a 50-50 split, depending on other factors like health as well. So length of marriage is relevant. Generally speaking, the longer the marriage, the more likely it is that the assets will be divided equally. If there is any mental health disability, physical disability for you, your ex-partner, or the children, then this needs to be taken into account. Because when you're sharing assets, it may be that you need to stay in the family home because of your own health issues, or maybe the children's health issues. It may be the other person needs to stay in the home because of the same reasons. So we need to look at what health issues there are and what you need because of those health issues. And then that tells us what's fair as well. The next one is contribution. And again, this one is something that is quite controversial. Lots of people will say, well, I paid more into the marriage. I worked full time and I paid more money into the marriage. Therefore, I should get more out. And the law doesn't look at it like that. And the reason why is because it might be one of you has paid, earned more during the marriage, and the other person has given up their career to be able to bring up children. So the one person can concentrate on their career. So we need to look at that and see what the contribution is. The court's not really interested in looking at who did what in a lot of detail. They're also not interested in going through all the finances and, look at, I paid for nursery fees and I paid the mortgage. They won't go through that. They see you as a partnership. And as a partnership, you've amalgamated these assets. We now just need to work out how to share them. But contribution can be relevant. It can also be relevant, say, for example, where one person has contributed by being a genius, for example, and that is taken into account. So, for example, Jeff Bezos, when they were looking at their divorce settlement, he got more in his settlement than his wife, ex-wife, because actually he'd brought in the majority of the assets. His genius had meant that the family had these assets. So he was able to keep more of it. And obviously we're talking about billions here. So, I'm sure it doesn't make too much difference. But his genius led to them having those assets. So in that situation, that contribution is taken into account. Usually, extreme behavior is not taken into account, but extreme behavior might be. So we need to think about what is this behavior that the court may consider as part of this consideration on what is a fair settlement. So extreme behavior might be, say, behavior that has meant that you've had to remortgage your house 3 times and therefore there's not much equity in it due to gambling. So because of gambling debts, there's not much left in the pot, and it might be that the person who wasn't gambling takes a bit more. It might be that the person who's having the children needs the majority of the assets to be able to buy a home, settle down the children. So we need to kind of look at how behavior has affected the finances. So it is only behavior that's affected the finances. If, say, for example, one person has had an affair, it may be that it's not the affair that is taken into account as behavior that means that you should get more. And lots of people do say that, well, the other person had an affair, they left me, so therefore I should get more. And it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. If they had spent £100,000 on this person they were having an affair with, then that might be different. That's impacted your finances. So I'm going to touch a little bit on needs, because this is really important when we are looking at how to share what you have. We need to make sure your needs are met. And in most cases, there isn't enough money to obviously go further than that. So we look at your needs first. And then once your needs are met, if there's anything left, then that is shared between you. So you get a bit more than what you need. So housing needs, I mentioned this already, it's the first consideration. We need to think about where are you going to live? What do you need by way of housing? If you are living on your own, you might say, I need to live in a family home. And a family home might be a 8-bedroom property with a swimming pool and a gym. And do you actually need that? It might be that you would like to stay there, but that might not be a need. If you have children and they are living with you, even if it is 50% of the time, then you may need a bedroom for each of the children, depending on their ages. You might need a property that is close to the children's school so that you can get them to school and they're not traveling 2 hours to get there. And again, it may be that if you've got a child with physical disabilities, your needs for housing may be different. You might need a ground floor flat, you might need a bungalow, you might need a specially adapted house, specially adapted car, etc. So we need to work out your housing needs first. Your capital needs are what you need in savings to cover other things. So, for example, if you know you need to replace your car, then that is a need. And because you need to get the children to school, it might be that we need to allow for that as part of your settlement, and it is fair to allow for that. Income needs is everything you need to manage your monthly outgoings. So we need to look at this in a bit of detail. We need to look at your income coming in, your expenditure. We need to look at reasonable expenditure. Some people overinflate their expenditure so that it looks like their income needs are higher. Some people will be really conservative and they'll cut down everything with what they need. And that isn't a great thing to do, because we need to look at what's realistic rather than where you can slash money monthly, because you'll just get into debt because some of it is essential to pay out. So we need to look at your income needs, your income and expenditure, to work out what is fair. Say, for example, every month you are short £1,000, then we need to think about how this settlement can help you. Because if you are short £1,000, you'll just end up in debt every single month. What can we do to change that? And it's fair to look at this. The final need is pension needs. Generally, we need to have a look at what happens to you on retirement, and it is fair to consider your retirement. If you've got a pension and the other person's got a pension and they're about equal in benefits as well as the value, then it might be that you both keep your pensions and at least you've got something on retirement. If one of you, for example, has worked full-time throughout the marriage and you've got a reasonable sized pension, the other person maybe didn't work quite as long or work part-time and they haven't got good pension provision, it might be fair for a pension sharing order to be given so that you both have some money on retirement. And I do a talk on pensions, so feel free to come along to that as well. So those are the things that we need to take into account as well. And the final thing that we need to look at, and I've mentioned this already, is that not all of the assets that you have in your name, in the other person's name, and in joint name will form part of the matrimonial pot, will form part of matrimonial assets. There may be some assets that are clear should be out of the matrimonial pot. So non-marital assets could be inheritance. And again, there is such a grey area here. It's not always that every bit of inheritance is out. Sometimes it can be in. But we need to look at, can this inheritance be part of the matrimonial pot? Should it be left out of the matrimonial pot? It may be that you had a property before you got married, and you could say that that's out of the pot. And again, it's a grey area. We need to look at the circumstances around that property to work out whether it is part of the pot or not. You may have been separated for 5 years, and you may have purchased a house with your own money during that time. Should that be in the pot or not? So we need to consider these things. We need to consider the circumstances with all of this, because it's only what is in your matrimonial pot that needs to be shared. So I'm now going to give you an idea of how to look at this. So you look at your total assets. What do you have in your name? What's the values of everything? What do you have in the other person's name? And again, we need to look at the values of everything. What do you have in joint names? So that's your total assets that you have. And then the next step is, what part of these assets are your matrimonial pot? Which ones are fair to share? Which ones should be left out? And then we look at your needs. What reasonable needs do you have? And this is based on housing needs, income needs, pension needs, capital needs, and based on the Section 25 factors that I talked about first. We need to consider what your needs are, what your children's needs are. And then, do we have enough here to cover those needs? If we don't have enough, then it might be that these non-marital assets will have to come back in to be used to cover needs. If there is enough there to cover needs, once your needs are met, the remainder is then shared between you. So that's how we look at a settlement. This is how we look at how a fair settlement is reached as well. And I can go through an example if we have time as well. Before I move on, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how to work with me. My signature program is my divorce right program. It's 6 months of support and guidance from me through your divorce proceedings, financial matter, child arrangements. It may be that some people need an injunction as well, occupation order. So I help with absolutely everything. You know, we don't know what's going to come up for you, but I am there as your support and guide through the legal processes. But it's not just the legal processes we're talking about. There's lots of things that are practical. There's lots of things that you need to consider. Like, you may have reached an agreement that you sell the family home. And once that house is sold, there's certain things that will happen. But how do you actually put everything together so that you are safe, legally, you are covered, but it doesn't impact you? Or, you know, when I went through my divorce, I sold my family home, and I did understand what I was doing, but I didn't have anywhere to live. And I understood that, and I did that for a reason. But we don't want that to happen if you've got children. It's not ideal. So we need to make sure we've considered everything and made a plan. I help you with correspondence. So if you receive emails from the other person, from their solicitor, I can guide you on what that means and how to respond. I help you with documents, with court documents. I have templates, but I can help you fill in documents as well. I help you with your divorce application. Oh, and I'm jumping. Help you with the divorce application. We go through the finances. We come up with financial proposals, and we come up with a settlement that possibly is the right one for you, the benefits of it, why I think that's a good settlement, and something that you are able to take to the other person to try and get to settlement. If you are going through mediation, I'm supporting you through mediation as well. It's a really supportive community because actually this is done in a group setting. All the calls are in a group. So there are other people on the call. You can stay anonymous, but you end up with this supportive community that is there for you. And often it's emotional, it's difficult, and you've got myself and the other people in the community to help you and to guide you. We do have some one-to-one private calls with me. You have 2 of them. One is to go through your financial proposals because I can't do that with someone else on a call. Obviously, it's very private. And the other one is onboarding. So when we are starting, I really want to make a plan to understand everything. So we do that one-to-one as well. And I bring in other experts for you because sometimes you need a parenting coach. You might need someone to come in and talk about mortgages or pensions or wills. So we bring other people too. And before I carry on, I'm just going to take you through a case study of one of my clients. Her name isn't Pam, but I'm calling her Pam for the purposes of this. And Pam is an actual client that has just finished working with me. She's got 2 children, aged 17 and 15, and she's been working part-time while the children were growing up. Her husband worked full time, and she worked part time so that she could do the drop offs, she could look after the home. Her husband didn't need to have the stress of everything else. And it worked really well. They went through a lot of difficulties in the marriage. And the husband was, really struggling with his mental health and other things as well. But due to the circumstances, the main asset was the family home. And part of that was due to the husband's behavior, that so many assets had been lost. When she came to me, she was in a really bad way. She couldn't stop crying. She was emotional. She was scared. She was lost. She knew she needed to get divorced. And she was very lucky in that her in-laws really supported her through this journey of getting divorced. They actively encouraged her to do this. Her husband was an alcoholic, and the children were really being affected, and their finances were really being affected. So through the process and through the program, we got her divorce application done first, and that was submitted. The next step was to start gathering information about their finances. What did they have together? And get this all valued and put together. We reviewed the finances and we created 3 proposals that she could consider. And once we'd done those 3 proposals, I sense checked those proposals, because there's lots of proposals you can come up with. Some of them make no sense to go ahead with. Some of them, it might be you can't get that mortgage. It might be for whatever reason that isn't a good proposal for the other person or for you. It might be that it doesn't meet your income and expenditure, and that proposal will mean that you are losing money every month and we can't leave you in debt. So we need to really work hard to understand each proposal and speak to, say, a mortgage advisor, a financial advisor. I go through it, so we are really looking at this in detail. So we came up with a proposal, and actually her proposal, she was getting the majority of the family assets. And there was reasons for this, because she needed to stabilize the children. There was nothing else to hand over to him. And because he was an alcoholic, whatever he got, he would have spent on alcohol, and it wouldn't have lasted. So we had this proposal, it was put to him, and actually he instantly agreed, luckily, and this was put into a financial agreement. They both signed it, and it was sent off to the court. And I had spoken to her about this order, because she was getting the majority of the assets, that it might come back as returned, because the court says this isn't fair and reasonable. Why is he not getting anything much? And she got asked to go to court. And I knew that this was going to happen because of her, the settlement that they'd both agreed. And so understanding what's fair and reasonable is important. When she got called into court, he got called into court as well, and they both spoke to the judge. And the judge says, why have you reached this agreement? And they explained the situation. He knew that he would drink away anything he got. He wanted to stabilize the family. And so he wanted this settlement as well. And the judge finally granted it. But it was a bit of work to get it through. So this is something that shows you that although she had an agreement that wasn't fair and reasonable, we did manage to get it through because the circumstances meant that it made sense. So these are the kind of things that we would be looking at together. And when she was in court, she was messaging me, and she did say, the stress is over. I became a bit emotional in court, and she came on one of our group calls to share the news with the other people on the call, just to give them hope that she was this person who was so lost, and she managed to get everything done in 6 months, maybe 7 months. And obviously she said, I've been amazing, so that I'm super grateful for her words. So these were her words, and she's always happy to come on and talk about what she's been through. If you're interested in finding more about the program, let me know and we can set up a call. And I'll put the links to book a call in the chat box so that you can look at that as well. I have written a book, and this book is not just for reading, it's actually for you to take action, because that's what I'm all about. I want to encourage you to take steps, to take action. And this is actually a place where you can write, you can take action, you can put in notes and go through finances, children, mindset, everything that you need to think about when you're going through a divorce. So feel free to purchase that planner as well, because there's lots of things that actually will help you take action. And what I'm going to do in the chat box, I'll just put down some links so that you can reach out to me if you need to. And especially if you want to find out about the program, then do let me know. There we go, that's gone in. And we can definitely look at that. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to have a look at some of your questions, see what you guys have been saying, because I did see things coming up, but I didn't get a chance to go through them all. Okay, so let's see what's been coming up. I haven't started anything yet, but already at sticking point, refinances. At the start of this whole process, but feeling really overwhelmed and scared. I know there is a light at the end of it all, but having the strength to kick it off is tough. And that's absolutely how most people feel. Most people are really worried, scared. It's really overwhelming to work out what to do first, but just to know that you will get through it. You will figure out how to move things forward. But you need support because it is really overwhelming. It can be really lonely as well. You need to have a tribe there. You need to know what needs to be done and how to look at it. So no, thank you for sharing that, but I do fully understand. Financial challenge has been the sole provider for circa 20 years. Finally had the courage to accept financial abuse and moving forward. He won't engage in selling the property, have tried by suggesting a very lucrative offer that would have worked in his favor, but constantly having to chase for updates and response. And there may be a reason why he's not responding. Sometimes people are delaying because they feel emotional and they're not ready to deal with this. Maybe you are further forward emotionally because maybe you've made the decision that it's over, and he possibly is not quite there. So he's in denial. He's still hoping that if he doesn't respond to anything, this will go away and you'll stay together. Sometimes if you've been the main breadwinner, he may be scared how this is going to look for him. He may be worried financially. Maybe he's just holding on. Sometimes people delay because they're hiding assets as well. So that's worth bearing in mind. Maybe he just literally is sticking his head in the sand. We never know what it is, but it's always good to try and figure out what that is so that we know how to respond. It's a shame because you will get it through. It's just this will make it much harder. If starting the divorce process, but the husband has already moved some savings and opened up online accounts like Monzo, savings were gifted to me from my mum and put into husband's account because I trusted him at the time. And that does make it really difficult. Other savings are part of his redundancy and other gifted from my siblings, but went into his account. My fear is that he has already moved these savings. And sometimes when something has been gifted to you, if you leave it in a separate account, we can leave it out of the marital assets. But where it's been mixed in, like in your case, it then becomes part of the marital assets. And you need to find that. You need to work out what's happened to that money because you knew it was there and you knew you put it into that person's account. So there needs to be an audit trail of what has happened. And possibly he has moved the savings, but we need to try and find them and find out what's happening. Thank you for sharing your story. Great to hear and encouraging. That's no problem. I've got a direct message here. If I am the sole income provider, but he calls himself self-employed, although there has been no money coming in that I'm aware of. He's used up all his savings in so-called investments and recently used up my salary for investments. So I had no money to pay the monthly mortgage. I even logged a fraud alert case as I feel like he's being scammed as they keep asking for money to release the funds, cryptocurrency. So finally, my question, if he has no steady income, then would the court expect me to provide for him and also split the family home 50-50 and all of my pensions? So if he's got no steady income, we can look at his earning capacity. He will have an earning capacity unless there's a reason why he can't work. So if he went out to get a job, what could he earn? Because it's not enough for him just not to earn any money and expect you to provide. There will be an earning capacity. So we need to look at that. And you need to really look into what has happened, into this investment. It may be the investment will be an asset. Let's find out what exactly is happening. And as a direct message, we do not have children. My partner has not supported by being a house husband. So everything has fallen on me to earn, cook, clean, shop, etc. Okay, I mean, from that point of view, you could say you've contributed more to the family. And so you might say, I need more. But he will say that I don't have anything, I don't have savings, I don't have a good income. So I need more. And so there's a balancing act there. And obviously, we need to look at what's happened to his investment, what's happened to his earning capacity as well. Okay, another direct message. I hope you had a lovely holiday. Thank you. I did. It was beautiful and absolutely what I need. And your talks are very encouraging. The issue we have is that my partner does not want to divorce as comfortable, but I am not happy to continue. I have elderly parents and no support from him, including no family visits, also no physical relationship for the past 10 years, which is not normal. In the process, I am emotionally connected to someone who has been a great help, and I just want to get out, but of course with a fair offer. Am I in my fair rights, and how do I just get out? Because he is comfortable. So if you want to get divorced, then you can get divorced. If that person doesn't want it, you can still push it through, because as long as for one person the marriage is over, then he can't stop you from pushing this through. He can make it difficult. So it's like anything. Divorce is a path that is windy, and there'll be lots of obstacles in the way, but it doesn't mean you can't get round them. If you really want this, just know that he will make it difficult for whatever reason. Maybe he's comfortable. Maybe he thinks, why would I want this now? I'll just stay together even if this marriage isn't perfect. Maybe he gets lots out of the marriage that you're not getting. And so maybe he doesn't want to move it forward. But as long as you want to and you are ready, you can push this forward. Don't let his wish to continue stop you if that's what you want. And you are entitled to a fair settlement. It doesn't matter that he doesn't want the divorce. It doesn't matter that you are pushing this through. That is not relevant to your finances. We still have to look at that separately and decide what is a fair settlement in your circumstances. So that's how you need to look at this. If you are ready to take that step, then take that step. Start looking at it and know that in the future you will get through this. Of course, we don't know whether it's going to be 6 months. Lots of my clients finish this in 6 months, but often, there's people that can't because the other person makes it difficult. It might take 8 months, 9 months, might take 12 months for them. But you will get to the other side. So just keep on to that hope that you will get there. My husband is taking lots of debts at the moment in his name as he knows about the divorce coming. He doesn't want to give me and the children money if anything left in the divorce. What can I do? So you need to know what these debts are for. When I got divorced, my ex-husband had lots of debts, and some of them I didn't know about, but suddenly when we're splitting everything, all these debts land, all these credit cards land, and he's expecting me to share them. I didn't know about them. I went through all the statements and worked out exactly what had been spent on, and none of it was for the family. So I refused to cover those debts. He had to hold most of them on his own. Some of them were for the family, and obviously we put them into the pot to be considered. So depending on what he's done with those debts, what the money's been used for, you need to have a look at it. Please, can you confirm the clause that you mentioned, section 25 something? It's section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act. If you look it up, you'll see it everywhere because it's factors taken into account during divorce. So feel free to look that up and get some more information. Does your book cover most of your Zoom sessions? It doesn't cover everything because it's really hard to cover everything in a book. but it does cover things about mindset, things, how to actually change your mindset to be able to get through this process, and the things that I use. It covers the divorce application. It covers how to look at your finances, what to take into account, and it gives you spaces to write in. So it's a workbook. It covers how to reach an agreement around the children and what is taken into account as well, and sources of support as well. Okay, so I'll take a few more questions. I've recently initiated conversation about divorce, and my husband agrees that we're unhappy, but won't divorce as he doesn't want to split assets amicably. That seems like it's, something coming up today for all of you. And even said he'd remortgage the house and move the money into his father's account abroad. If the house is in joint names, he can't remortgage it without your consent. If it isn't in joint names, you need to do something to cover yourself urgently so that he can't do that. You don't want money coming out of the house and disappearing. It's really important that you are safe and your assets are safe. So really important to cover everything and do some work on protecting yourself. He is in a debt spiral, says I haven't maximized my income. I have pretty much solo parented the children since they have been born. Eldest is 13. I could apply the same argument to him. I did the lion's share of the childcare and child rearing, allowing him to maximize income, yet he is in a lot of debt. He wants to tap into some savings, inheritance from my dad, which you might be able to keep aside, as that has been used and has used quite a lot of it already. He claims that it's wrong that he's in debt, but I'm sitting on savings. Well, the savings may not be part of your matrimonial assets. He wants to come to an agreement before we speak to anyone. Okay. You might need to get help before you speak to him, because actually you need to understand your rights first. Direct message, thank you. Can I tell him I've been emotionally connected to someone else? Because it's a fact. In reality, we are living in the same house. That is a personal comment. Sometimes when you tell your ex-partner that you're emotionally connected to someone else, they will get angry and they will make your divorce about that, when quite clearly it's about lots of other factors. So sometimes you might confuse matters by saying that, but that's entirely up to you. I sometimes say keep that aside because that's not the reason you're getting divorced. I need to look at the reasons for his debt. Yes. I would say that's important. The house is in his name. How can I protect myself? So you need to put your matrimonial interest on the property so that he cannot remortgage or sell without your knowledge. And you have to do that urgently. So it's called a matrimonial homes right notice. I hope that helps. Okay, I'm going to have to go as I've got a call with the people in the program where we go through things in a lot of detail. And obviously I'm sharing things that they need to do in a lot more detail. So that's at 1 o'clock today. So I do need to go. I hope you found this useful. Let me know your thoughts. How have you found it? What would you like me to cover? Because I'm going to be adding more topics to the talks that I do. So I'd really love to hear what it is that you would like me to cover. What am I missing in the talks that I'm doing? So glad that you found it helpful. Welcome back. Thank you. There'll be every week now. Hoping to connect with you specifically in the autumn to join the program. Brilliant. And you can connect with me now and almost join it now to start in the autumn so I can give you things to do in the meantime. So see how you feel to the person that sent me a direct message. Thank you. I've got some more direct messages. I've booked a call. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found it helpful. If there are any topics you want me to cover, feel free to drop me an email, drop me a message, because I want to add to the talks I'm doing, because I want them to be super useful for you. It's great to see so many of you here. Enjoy the sunshine. Do come and join me next week. I've no idea what I'm covering, but I do have a list of them. So do join me next week. It's great to see you here. And I hope that this was good for you. Nice to see you, Jane. It's always good to see a face on these talks. Otherwise, I'm talking to myself most of the time. How are you doing? Hope you're well.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Good.
Just wanted to show my appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jane.
Cheers. Okay, bye.
Take care. And see you all very soon. Next week, I hope. Take care.